Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to my look back at 2016 and the significant events that happened to me in 2016. And there were a couple. Overall, the year was relatively light. It wasn't like I did something every day of the year. Some years have been that way in the past, where it felt like I was always having fun doing something, but 2016 was relatively light. We started off, the first major thing that I did in 2016 was I had the pleasure, right before my birthday, of attending the Los Angeles County Air Show. Now, this is a show that I've wanted to attend for years. Well, there have only been, 3 shows, so I've wanted to attend it for like 3 years, ever since it started, but I never could find anybody to go with, or the person that I wanted to go with was unavailable to go. So, but in 2016, I had a friend of mine that I asked them if they would be interested in going to the air show. And at first they're like, yeah, we could probably do it. Well, I'll probably have to watch from the sidelines. I'm like, let's do something better than that. Let's go to the air show together and get into the show, and I will get us both in. I will make sure we both get in. I'm paying. You still want to go? And she's like, yep, okay, let's go. So we got the tickets, and we went to the local airport where they were holding the air show, and that was fun. I definitely had as much fun there as I thought I would have. There were a couple of cool things there. Of course, the Blue Angels were there. That was, you totally can't understate how awesome those things are. There was all kinds of cool things there. One of the other cool things that was there was a jet truck, like a jet semi-truck. This thing, I believe, was hauling ass down the runway at something like 350 miles an hour. Racing an airplane, and the truck won. That's something you would never think would happen. Of course, if you're racing a Cessna, that pretty much is going to make the truck the winner by default. But it's still, you don't. When you're up in the air, you think you're going to go faster. This truck can actually hit speeds of 300. I think the record for that jet truck is 376 miles an hour. I don't know where they hit that record, but I do believe that. So that was awesome. That was really cool. And of course, I had a behind the scenes sort of a view of what was going on, because I got to hear the aircraft communications. Because being the radio nerd that I am, I brought my radio with me so I could listen to the aircraft stuff, and that was totally awesome. Got to hear all that, and they had all kinds of neat. They even did a Pearl Harbor reenactment during that, which was really cool. And you can see some of that here on this channel, actually. I do have video of some of that. Not all of it good, of course, since I'm a totally blind person that occasionally makes videos. When I really want them to be somewhat decent, I make sure someone helps me, because if I just do it, well, then it's crappy. But just because I can't see what the heck I'm doing, so it's naturally crappy. So anyway, so that was the first big thing I did. I visited with my friend Kira up in Oxnard. And actually right after that, literally right after the visit with Kira, I went down to San Diego and visited my brother Kurt. And my brother Kurt works a lot. I think he works too much. I mean, like to the point where I've seen him twice this year, and we, in my opinion, didn't get to do as much as I would have liked. We actually did more the first time that I saw him than the second by far, but even the first time, I practically had to beg him, and it took nearly 3 weeks. I was down there for almost a month, and during that entire time, I mostly hung out with his girlfriend. But at the time, they were living in a pretty nice location, and I would play with the radio a lot too because it was up on a hill, and I could listen to all the stuff in the area, all the ham radio repeaters and the trolley network they have down there. Love that trolley. And in fact, part of that visit, near toward the end of it, in April, we went to the Mexican border. We actually would end up doing that twice in the same week. What we did the first time we went to the U.S.-Mexico border, we took, this is one of the times I was able to get Kurt. We actually did stuff together. We took the truck. Kurt's a nice big, tall Dodge truck that he has that can get just about anywhere. We drove that down to the border, parked at the border, ate down there at the McDonald's, and looked around down there. We did not cross the border. We just kind of examined what was around us on the border. It's kind of neat. You got stores you can look at, and just all the different places they've got. You can, if you want to get a Metro PCS thing, like let's say you're coming over from Mexico and you want to get Metro PCS stuff, you could do that. You can probably get local Mexico carrier SIMs too if you want to do that. But I should look into that next time I go down that way. I should look into doing that. Getting a SIM for a Mexico provider. It might be kind of fun just to have it. Then I could have a Mexican phone number. And then see if it would work here in the U.S. and what carrier I would be on. Because that might be an interesting way to potentially try AT&T. Of course, I'd have to probably pay in pesos. I'd have to figure out that. Or if I could pay in U.S. dollars and the proper conversion would be done. That might be kind of fun to maybe play with that. But anyway, so we played around down at the border for a couple hours, and then I stood right there at the border fence, just playing with the radio and whatnot, and then we turned around and came back, had a little fun down there, and then just 4 days later, on April 16, we did the trip again, except with a slightly different twist. A couple of them, actually. First of all, we went down to the border on the San Diego trolley. That thing is sweet. That is the coolest way to get down to the border. You literally are dropped off 10 feet from the McDonald's that we ate at. The border, the McDonald's there on the border. You're literally dropped off right across the street from it. It's really cool. So you're literally right on the border there. And in this case, we looked around a little more, found a really tasty hot dog place. It was in one of those like little portable units, like it might be temporary, which it probably is. But yeah, it was in like one of those little portable buildings, but it was delicious hot dogs. They were so good that I had 2 of them. And the interesting thing about that was that I wasn't charged. The transaction that I did that day at that location, I wasn't charged for that until 2 weeks later. Well, I mean, I was charged for it. I saw it go pending, but it didn't post for 2 weeks. because I remember it. I didn't think anything of it, and it came back on my card. I'm like, oh, that's weird. And then suddenly I saw a drop in funds that I didn't expect, and I looked, and yeah, it was the place I had eaten at there in San Ysidro, right there on the border. The hot dog place. I forget the name of it now, but it's right there on the San Ysidro border. I think it was a new place down there. Certainly new to me, so I ate the delicious hot dogs there. And then we walked around, over there, and then we were on the bridge, and we spotted a Border Patrol officer, so we flagged them down and actually asked them a question that would turn this day of hanging out at the border into a historic day for me. We asked them, now keep in mind, I currently, even now, do not have a passport. I intend to eventually get one, but currently I do not have one. And so we asked the Border Patrol officer, and I'm like, hey, I'm on vacation down here. I want, I'm totally blind. I want to see if I can, would it be okay if I just explore, if we can cross the border into Mexico? I flat out told them I didn't have a passport. And they're like, yeah, you should be okay. I think you'll be okay. You're not going to be a terrorist or anything. I'm like, no, I don't have any desire to do anything of the sort. So, and also keep in mind, only one of the three of us actually had passports. My brother's girlfriend has a passport. The rest of us did not and do not have passports. So, the adventure, once we got confirmation that it would be, we basically had authorization that we could do it if we wanted to. We thought about it some more, and then I'm like, hey, let's do it. There's still plenty of daylight left. What do we got to lose? Let's give it a shot. So we did. We walked toward because the neat thing about the Mexican border is if you want to, you can walk across. You don't feel like driving, you don't have to. You can do what we did. Take the trolley to the border, and then you can walk across into Mexico and go from there. And that's what we did. We, it was when we were there, it was actually fairly busy. So we, I believe it was a Saturday when we were there, the day that we made the historic border crossing. So we walked, and we were, rushing to, go through the turnstile. Once you go through that turnstile, you're committed. You ain't going back. So we went through that turnstile, and we were immediately inside of the immigration customs building. And that was the moment of truth. I mean, given how busy it was, the line wasn't as long as I thought it would be. We got to the point where we talked to the officer, and he, decides whether we are granted entry into Mexico or not. And we explained we didn't have our passport, and he just kind of, hey, you remember passport next time. Don't forget the passport next time. Okay, no problem. Gave us a warning. We're good. Very nice. Very, very, very awesome. We were in. We walked, exited the customs building, and we were in Tijuana, Mexico. And you could instantly tell the difference. I mean, you could tell the difference between leaving the United States and entering Mexico. The smell was different because, remember, they don't have the same pollution guidelines and things. They're less stringent on that. So you knew instantly that you were in Mexico at that point. And it was like, wow, it was very fascinating. And of course, being the nerd that I am, first thing I did was play around with my cell phone as we're walking along, and I have two cell phones, and I was watching what both of them were doing. There are two, I think there's more than that, but I've never connected to the third one, but there are two main mobile networks that cover the border area that I use with my phones. there are actually there's at least one more carrier than that, but I've never tried to see if I could connect to it because I had perfectly good coverage with the other two carriers. But there are two carriers. There is Telcel, which is the main one that I was on this particular trip. Ironically, both my phones happened to lock onto the same network, so that was kind of cute. And on one of my phones, I can actually, when I'm in range of a border provider like that, I can actually force roam to it, which is kind of nice. My main other phone, I can't do that. So that phone, it didn't even I mean, even the U.S. coverage is pretty impressive. I didn't even lose Verizon service, which is the phone I can't roam forcefully. I can't manually roam. I didn't lose that till I was actually on the Tijuana side of the border. I mean, the coverage from Verizon was phenomenal. And T-Mobile didn't do half bad either. But I purposely wanted to switch that over to Mexico. I wanted it to pretend it was in Mexico before I even got there. So I did that like while I was at the hot dog place, I think. Just because I'm a nerd and geek and I like to do that. Phone's on T-Mobile every day. It's kind of nice to put it somewhere else for a change. So I, we walked down the walkway there in Tijuana. Didn't walk that far, maybe a quarter mile, maybe a little more. Just seeing what was around, and we bought some there were vendors, and we bought some churros and ate them, and they were delicious, and it was awesome. It was great. So we did that, and before we got too far and too lost, we thought we better turn around and go back. And so we did. We turned around, came back, and that was that. It took us a little bit longer to get back in the U.S., but that was expected. Still, actually, it wasn't that bad considering what we actually went through, I believe, a quicker line than most people were in. So it only took us, I think, about 45 minutes to get back across into the United States. And once we were there, it was very much, a simple, we put our stuff through the security checkpoint and everything. Nothing obviously was wrong, so they let us through and we were good. And then we got back on the trolley and headed back to El Cajon where we were staying. So that was, beautiful. Be able to just instantly like that visit another nation and come back. Just like I was driving down the street to another city, but in this case I was going to a whole other country. Kind of awesome, actually, for me. So that was a very historic day for me because on April 16, 2016, I became an international traveler for the first time when I crossed the border into Mexico. And what even makes it more exciting is that I did it without a passport. I wasn't sure that I'd be able to, but I actually was able to. Like I said, I got that authorization. Now, right after I visited Kurt and his girlfriend Mina and my niece and everybody that I know, then right after that, pretty much, my good friend who's like a brother to me, my good radio friend and fellow like family member to me, Robert and he came down from Central Oregon where he resides, and this is something we'd actually been planning for, I think 3 weeks or a month, something like that. We rented a vehicle for the weekend. I think it was three days. I think we had it, or maybe it might have even been 4 days. I think we got an extra day out of it because of a small issue that we had that inconvenienced us for a little bit. So I think we got an extra day out of it. So we went around and did our radio stuff that we like to go. We went to various mountaintops, Mount Gleason and Fraser Mountain, and in fact that's when I discovered there was a cell phone tower at the top of Fraser Mountain. I did not realize that Fraser would even have a cell site. I didn't think there would need to be one at such a high mountaintop location. I always thought cell sites were designed to be low level, more local things, but no, there was one up at Fraser. So that was, not sure what its prime service area is, of course, other than the obvious Fraser Mountain area, but it's there and it's working. I used it. In fact, I was so impressed that I'm sitting on top of this mountain and I was getting like 40 plus megabits internet speeds. I was actually doing live Facebook video from there. And that is not something I expected to be able to do. Normally I go on mountaintops and things and I make videos, but I post them later, of course. Photos, same thing, but I never expected to be able to broadcast live from a place like that. So that was a unique experience, being able to do that from the top of Fraser Mountain. We had a pretty good time. In fact, actually, that night was the night we had our inconvenience. We had a flat tire coming down off of Fraser. So fortunately, we made it to a point where we could safely pull in to a store parking lot and wait for a person to come by and replace, help us get the spare on and get, so we could drive down to Burbank to get the vehicle exchanged, because we're like, well, we don't really want to keep driving this if it's going to do that. So we were able to go down there and get it exchanged, and the rest of our trip was uneventful. The rest of our visit and the time with that vehicle was uneventful. We had our fun, and that was that. And then in June, well, first of all, in May, was it May? Yeah, I think it was May. Or maybe it was early June. I actually forget now. I'd have to look back at my bank statement. But I upgraded my iPhone 6 Plus on T-Mobile to the iPhone 6s Plus. That was something I had planned to do because I had paid my phone off a couple months earlier. And so I was ready to upgrade. And to this day, that's what I'm using right now. And it's working real good. And that was the only phone upgrade I did in 2016. And I'll likely be able to do another one for my Verizon phone in 2017. I actually am looking forward to getting rid of the iPhone 6 here in about 2.5 months. Couldn't come soon enough, actually. This phone's going to be 2 years old, and it's showing its age now. But it still works good, though. It's the beauty of the phone. It's, even despite all it's been through, it's... in fact, during my visit with my brother in April, up to that point, the phone was like new, pretty much. But while I was visiting my brother in April, a dinner outing with my niece and my brother turned, as I was getting into his truck, my brother's truck, and the phone slipped out of my pocket, hit the concrete below, and as if that wasn't bad enough, as I'm getting out of the truck to look for the phone, I end up stepping on it. So, double whammy. Amazingly, it still works. Even today, it still works. And so, just wow. Absolutely amazing what the phone went through and how it still survived. But in March, I'll be looking forward to upgrading that, likely to an iPhone 7 Plus. Right after, that'll be my late birthday present, because that happens right after my birthday. So in June, I came down to Palmdale once again to visit with Julian and family friends that I know in the Little Rock area and Palmdale and such. And that was, pretty uneventful. We went up to Table Mountain a few times and hung around, hung out, all that good stuff. And July was kind of uneventful. I watched July 4th festivities here in Bakersfield. They weren't all that impressive, actually, but I watched them from Riverwalk Park. I was watching those. So that was okay. And then in August, another of my adventures would happen. I would go visit my friend Melissa, a blind friend that I know down in Palm Desert. I visited her once before in 2013, and we both myself and my friend Jane and another fellow blind friend that lives up near Glendale, um, we coordinated this visit to visit our friend Melissa, because she was already going anyway, and I'm like, hey, we could meet up. Jane and I could meet up in L.A. and then we could go together. And Jane was cool with it, and Melissa talked it over with her, and she was cool with it, so we did. We, I left. I believe it was the 8th of August. I think it was. And had a great time down there. It wasn't. We didn't go too many places because Melissa also had some other company as well that I got to know, and but we did have some good times. I have a little bit of recording from that adventure that I posted on audio. And when it was time, they have this silly rule in that apartment complex that guests can only stay for no more than a week. And I wasn't ready to go home yet. I'd had some issues with my sister and at the time, and I wanted to stay gone for a little longer. So when it was time to leave, I kind of resisted, and I think, oh, and must I forget, and how dare I forget, during this visit, I met up with a friend. His name is Diego. And we went to the top of the Palm Springs tram. Whenever I go to the Palm Springs area, I'd like to try and see if I can visit the tram while I'm down there at some point. And it almost looked like I wasn't going to be able to do it this time, but I managed to make an opportunity happen where I did get to go up to the tram on the during my visit to Palm Springs this past summer. And I had a great time up there. It was 105 or whatever down at the bottom, and it was a nice, comfortable 64 degrees on the top of the mountain. It was beautiful. Great day. My Diego had a receiver, Grundig shortwave receiver and aircraft band, and he brought that with him. We were scanning that, and I was, of course, playing with the radio and seeing what I could do and talking to Potosi and Monument Peak and all kinds of things like that. Just having the usual fun that I have when I go to the tram. So I've lost count. I think that was my 8th or 9th time up there. I'll have to figure out once and for all how many times I've been up there. But it's one of my favorite spots to go, and I'll go there again most likely. So I did that during that awesome trip to Melissa's. And then after that visit, when it was time for me to leave, which was the following Monday, I was being a little stubborn. I wasn't ready to leave yet. And I was kind of depressed because I had to leave, and I didn't want to go all the way back to Bakersfield when I wasn't ready to yet. So I thought to myself while I was traveling to Riverside, which was the connection point where I would need to make a decision. Actually, the final decision I'd have to be made to be made would have to be made in Los Angeles, but Riverside was a decision-making point because on the way there I thought, I have a friend who I've known for 7 years who lives in LA, and we've never met. We've kind of sort of talked about meeting, but our schedules never line up. Usually when I'm down in LA and I've got a little time to kill, she's usually at work. And I've tried a few times to see if she was doing anything. We could at least, have a short eyeball and say hi. But it never worked out. Well, in this case, I'm like, well, let me give my friend Veronica a call and see what she's doing and see if she'd want to meet up. Because I don't really have anything planned. I don't really want to go to Bakersfield just yet. So maybe we could work something out. Either, just a short meetup, or, you know, I was willing to do almost anything except go back to Bakersfield, at least not right away. So I called her up. I'm like, hey, what are you doing? And yeah, she happened to be home at the time. And she was getting ready to do at the time, she was doing a weekly thing with a few buddies, playing Dungeons and Dragons, which I need to learn how to play that. She even sent me a link, which I got to check out. But so I'm like, well, would you mind if I observe, and maybe we could meet up? And we talked about it for a minute, and she's like, yeah, let me see if we can do it. I don't think it'll be a problem. And then I was like, well, can you come pick me up? She was just getting ready to head out to the game site, which was in a city, the community of Baldwin Park. And she was just getting ready to head out there. And I'm like, well, let me figure out how I can get to Baldwin Park so that we can meet up. And so I asked her a few questions, like, I'm like, is there any Metrolink trains that go near there? Because I honestly didn't know. Because though I've ridden Metrolink, I haven't ridden the entire thing. And it turns out that there is a Metrolink train that does go to Baldwin Park. So I'm like, okay, let me figure out how I can get there. We figured out what line it was on. It was on the San Bernardino line. So after chatting for a bit, we coordinated it. She wasn't going to be able to come pick me up, as it turned out, because she had some stuff she had to pick up, like snacks and things for the gaming people. And then, by the time I got there, the game would already be starting, so she'd already be there, as it turned out, at the gaming spot where we were all meeting. And so, but she's like, if you can get an Uber to our location, if you can get an Uber to my location, then I'd be happy to take you back to LA when we're done. It's like, okay, that'll work. Not a problem. So that's what I did. I got to Riverside, and now normally I would have gone to Los Angeles from there. But instead of doing that, I got on the San Bernardino line, which had plans suddenly changed at the last moment, and suddenly, she couldn't make it or whatever when I was already on the train. That wouldn't have been an issue, as it turned out, because that train ended up in Los Angeles anyway. So I could have just, done whatever I had to do to, take that thing all the way to LA. And I would have been exactly where I would have been if I had taken the Riverside train straight to LA. So that was kind of cool. But nope, everything worked out perfectly. I got off at Baldwin Park Station, and that was actually a little bit nerve-wracking, because I'm like, okay, I'm now in a city I've never been in, but I'm going to get Lyft. I actually got Lyft because that was the app I was more familiar with at that time. And it worked. It totally worked. I was like, wow. Took a moment for the Lyft person to find me. I had to explain, I'm blind and I'm going to need help finding you, or you finding me, whatever we work out. And it worked, though. I walked a little ways, and then she finally found me, and we were good to go. She dropped me off where I told her. I met up with my friend Veronica, and we had an awesome time. I did a little mini interview with her on the way back from the game. And she introduced me to these really cool, oh God, I forget what they're called already. I need to ask her. But they're these really cool snacks. They're like pretzels, but they're sweet. And I forget what they're called. I'll definitely have to ask her. Because they were very good. I had like a whole handful of them while I was watching them play their game. And then when they were done, we came back and went to. She dropped me off. I was trying to get her out of going to work the following day, see if we could hang out one more day, but that didn't work. So she dropped me off at Union Station, and I prepared to, head home. Actually, at that point, I wasn't sure what my options would be because by the time we got there, it was like 12:30 in the morning. I'm like, oh boy, I wonder if I can even hang out here all night. Um, you know, because I'd never been to LA Union Station that late. That was certainly the quietest I've ever seen Union Station. um, but as it turned out, there was an Amtrak bus going to Bakersfield at 1:15, I think it was. So I took that. So I got to hang out at Union Station for a little bit. Came back to Bakersfield, and that was that adventure. That was a fun week. Even that last night, I enjoyed finally getting to meet my longtime inspirational friend Veronica, who got her ham radio license at the age of 5 and a half. Something crazy young like that. Like, whoa, cool. So I hope to get the chance to hang out with her again. Her and I have a lot in common. We both like road trips. We both, I think, like to hike as well. So 2017, we might be doing some more adventures. I'm going to see what we can do about that. Of course, she's always busy, though. I got to get her away from work long enough to actually see what we can do. Got to plan a weekend or something. So, but I think we could probably do it at least once. So, we did that. That was in August. And then the next major adventure that I would have the pleasure of being a part of would be in October. Toward the middle of October, I went once again to go visit my brother. And this time they were in a different location because they were modeling a house, and so they were They were in the northern part of San Diego County, the little city of Carlsbad. Now, this adventure was a little bit different because instead of just going straight away and meeting up with my brother, I talked to another ham radio buddy of mine. His name's Eric. He does a lot of voiceover work for TV networks and such. And I've known him for years, helped him out with his internet networking stuff for his radio IRLP node. And we finally met, and he took me out to dinner. So that was awesome. Totally, totally awesome. And we had a great time. And definitely look forward to future adventures with him as well. And we almost actually had 2 adventures, but the second one wasn't to be because of technicalities that I would find out about later with regard to my brother and other issues. So anyway, hung out with my brother. Got to go to one of his job sites down in La Jolla. I hung out with his girlfriend a lot. We went around town, went to the local beach. We got to go down to La Jolla, like I said, and there was a condo down there that he was working on. That was a really good T-Mobile spot. Oh my goodness. It was an awesome T-Mobile spot. I actually, if I were staying there, I would be using T-Mobile exclusively for internet. It was that good. Very good performance. Very good speeds. Everything was awesome. And then after that, after we were done working there at that spot, we went to the beach because my brother still needed to work a little bit, and so his girlfriend and I thought, well, let's go down to the beach for a while. So we did. We went down to it's a place called Children's Pool Beach, I believe it was called Children's Pool Beach, and I was on the beach a little bit, but the really fun part for me was actually when we were slightly above the water, about 25 feet or so, and I was playing with the radio, and oh my God, I was hearing things down there that I should not have heard. I was hearing stuff, of course, all over San Diego County, like it was next door. But also, I was hearing stuff that I thought there'd be no way I could hear. Things like a friend of mine has a repeater way up in Oxnard. I could hear that near Channel Islands. I could hear that. That's a good, what is that? That's probably a good 90 miles plus, at least, maybe even more than that. And I was hearing that. I was hearing ham radio repeater up in the Tehachapi Mountains. I mean, it was quite weak, but given how far away I was, there's no way I should have been able to hear that. And there it was. I heard it and recognized it. I was like, holy cow. I mean, that was an awesome spot to play radio. You know, that's one of the most awesome non-mountaintop spots I've ever played radio from. You get to the right spot on the coastline and oh my God, you can really get out there. It's like, holy crap. So that was really enjoyable, and I've got plenty of audio recordings of that. That was very awesome. And then we mainly would just hang out at the house and watch. And actually, it wasn't just my brother and his girlfriend and myself this time that was there. It was our other brother Craig was there too. So it was Craig and Kurt and myself and his girlfriend. We were all visiting and hanging out. It was great. Didn't really get to do much in terms of going places together this time because Kurt had to get that job done. So we, didn't get to do all that much. But I did actually. Toward the end of the visit, I found out that technically I wasn't supposed to be staying there. I was informed of this by my brother Craig. We were chatting one night and I discovered that technically I wasn't supposed to be there because I was working on a plan to stay until that following Saturday, which would have allowed me to go up to a cabin that my friend Eric has where he has his ham radio repeater up on Palomar Mountain. And I was looking forward to doing that. And I had, planned it so that I would stay through doing that and then leave the following day. Well, then I find out a few days before that basically friends of the client that Kurt was working for were going to come by and check on the progress. And they already knew that I was hanging out there and technically I wasn't supposed to be there. So they're like, well, you got to find something to do for the day. And I'm like, okay, let me think about that for a minute. And I'd been talking to this fellow ham radio operator that lives down in Playas del Tijuana. Playas de Tijuana, down there in just 8 miles in into Mexico, in Tijuana there. So I'm like, I wonder if I could meet this guy. And we started talking about it. And he's like, well, yeah, if you can meet me on my side of the border, if you can get down here, meet me on my side of the border, I'll pick you up. I tried to get him to meet me on the U.S. side, but he's like, I don't want to go through that long line. I'm like, okay, I understand. I'll see what I can do. But no one could go with me. See, my brother's girlfriend was pregnant at the time, and so we didn't feel comfortable bringing her with me. And Kurt was busy, and Craig just wasn't interested at all, which was disappointing. Adventures like this, I like to at least have one family or friend with me to, describe things, and if I have questions, I can ask them, and it just makes the adventure more fun, kind of like the April trip was. And I wasn't able to have anyone come with me, so this trip was another historic trip for me. Not only would I attempt to become an international traveler without a passport for the second time, but I would also be doing the entire thing completely and totally by myself. Everything. So that's what I decided to do for that day when I had to be out of the area. But, basically they hid the suitcase, put the suitcase in my brother's truck, and I took all the stuff I wanted to take with me in my bag and brought it with me. And I was off. I left from San Diego, or from Carlsbad, took the coaster down to downtown San Diego. From there, I took the awesome trolley that I was telling you about earlier, the Blue Line, all the way down to the border. And I got help where needed. In fact, when I got to San Diego, I actually had to get on a Green Line trolley because the driver said they would help me once they got to their final stop, and they did. And then I caught the Blue Line to the border. Love that. That's my favorite line of the whole trolley. I mean, that thing takes you, as close to another nation as you can get without actually going into it. And it's your call whether you go into it or not. It was awesome. So I got to the border. First thing I wanted to do was have breakfast so I could gather my thoughts, because there was a possibility that my plan to meet my friend Chris was his name, that plan might not go through because he might have been called to do some work up in San Diego County. So while I'm going down to the border, he might be coming the other way, and I might miss him because he might have to work. So the first thing I wanted to do was eat breakfast and figure out what my plan would be. And so I did. I had to have a little help getting to the McDonald's because I had no clue where it was. I knew it was close, but I got there. Was able to get help when needed. Sometimes it takes a while, but I eventually got it. And I got into the McDonald's and had my breakfast. And while I was eating my breakfast, I called Eric because down there in that area, it's when you're on the border, it's actually hard to. I couldn't talk to Chris directly because it's kind of hard to. You can't really get the Palomar repeater from there on the border. There's some hills that shield you from the repeater. So Eric was my relay. I literally called him on the phone and I said, hey, see what Chris is up to. See if I can still come down, because I'm here at the border and, regardless, I'm going to be down here all day. If I couldn't meet Chris, my plan was to just kind of explore what was around and check out some of the stores. I did have cash on me, so I could buy stuff if I wanted to and whatnot. So it wasn't going to be a total loss. But the main plan was to see if I could go into Mexico, visit with Chris for a few hours, and get back across. The whole thing was going to be an adventure. Every leg of the journey, especially once I got to the border, was going to be an adventure. So while I ate breakfast, I asked Eric what Chris's plans were, and he got hold of Chris and let me know that we were on, that Chris would be able to pick me up, and I was to contact Chris on a given frequency once I got to the border. I was already at the border, but once I got on the Mexico side. And that's what I did. After eating breakfast, I actually ran into a nice young lady that happened to live in Tijuana and worked in San Diego. And she was on her way back into Tijuana, and so I just followed her. We both did the infamous go through the border turnstile together. That was totally awesome. And then we parted ways at that point because I was put in the hands of we got up to the where the Mexicans decide whether they're going to let us in or not. And they actually gave me more of a lecture this time. They were like, here's, I told them I didn't have a passport, and this is where things could have changed right then and there. They could have held me right there. I had actually planned for that situation. In the event that happened, I would have made some phone calls and kind of documented the process of what they would have done had they not granted me entry into Mexico. What the process would have been for them deporting me back to the U.S. And they explained that it wouldn't just be a turn around and go back. It would be, kind of a long process. So technically I would have ended up in Mexico for a little while, or at least I would have hung out in the immigration building for a bit, no doubt. But they gave me a lecture about the passport and, here's why you need it. We don't know who you are and yada yada, and want to make sure everything's good. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I got you. And they're like, so you got to have that, but I'll give you a warning this time. He said, I remember that. I'll put you in here with a warning and you'll be good. I'm like, oh wow, thank you, because that could have potentially been the first hurdle of my trip. But it also would have been rather interesting because I would have documented the whole thing. But fortunately, that did not happen. I was again cleared to enter Tijuana, and it was time to once again cross into Mexico. Enter Mexico. And that was when things got nervous, because remember, I don't know a lick of Spanish, and I'm going into Mexico to meet an American that lives there, and I'm doing this all by myself. Okay, so I'm walking down the street there, and I'm in Tijuana officially now, and I'm walking down, and every time there would be a veer in the path, I would just kind of try to follow the path and hope that I wouldn't veer, and hope that I wouldn't, mess up and go the wrong way or something. And I actually made contact with Chris while I was inside the customs building. And that's when I discovered that you're not supposed to use electronic devices, including radios. Well, I don't know about all electronic devices, but certainly radios. You're not supposed to use two-way radios inside the immigration building. I did not know this. Well, I certainly found out when Chris comes blaring through my radio, and then I'm told, yeah, you can't use that while you're in here. Oh, okay. Thank you for telling me. So I'm like, hang on, Chris, I'll be right back with you. And then I quickly put the radio away, turned it off. And then an officer helped me to the other, to the outside. And then I started walking, and then I turned the radio back on as soon as I got outside. And I made contact with Chris again, and it took him a while before he visually saw me. That's what I was worried about, that once he got down to where I was, I talked to him when he was like 2 or 3 miles out, which is pretty good, because there was a high point that he could look down on the border and even downtown San Diego, and he could talk to me. So I was talking to him, and I just kept walking. I probably walked maybe half a mile. I don't know how far I walked, actually, but it seemed like a pretty good distance. And then he met me. He finally found me, and we met up, and we went back to his place. And meanwhile, I'm playing with my phone, doing all my geeky things. This time around, one phone was on the Movistar network, while the other phone was on Telcel. Movistar was the phone that actually had that I had data connectivity, which was interesting. And I actually had surprisingly good LTE speeds down there in Mexico. I wasn't expecting anything super good, given that I was outside of the United States, but they didn't have half bad internet connectivity down there. I think I got like 30 Mbps at times. Like, whoa, okay. Upload was about 6, but it was still cool that I was like, wow, didn't expect that. So, but it was awesome. It worked. And I went to my buddy's place, and we played radio for a couple hours. And then we had lunch, and that was unique in itself, because he started telling me, I wasn't sure where I was going to have lunch. I was expecting, some Mexican place, whatever, authentic Mexican place, being in Mexico. But then he tells me, oh, there's a Carl's Jr. here in Playas. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Carl's Jr. in Mexico? We're not in the U.S. anymore. I mean, I realize we're not that far from the U.S., but we're not in the U.S. anymore. So I did not expect there to be anything resembling United States fast food chains in Mexico at all. I didn't expect that. So I'm like, I got to see this. And sure enough, we went there for lunch, and he teased me about it, and I was happy to accept the tease. we I ordered what I usually get at Carl's Jr. A what is it? Number 3, the Western Bacon Burger combo. Yep, that's what I ordered. And honestly, I think the burger tasted even. I love it here in the States, but I think in Tijuana, it actually tasted, I think, slightly better even. I was very surprised and very impressed. And I got, God, it was so weird. I gave the cashier 10 United States dollars because I could have used my card, I'm sure. And next time I go down there, I want to do that just to see what the foreign currency rate is and all that. Conversion rate or exchange rate. That's what it is, exchange rate. See what that is and all that. But this time I didn't. I thought I'd just stick simple cash because I already had it anyway. And he yeah, I got the gave him a $10 bill, and I got pesos back. That was like so cool. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm keeping these. I gave some of them to a friend of mine, but I kept a few. I kept 1 peso or 1 bill and some coins. So that was cool. My lunch cost me, what was it? I got 96 pesos back, I think. I think the total was like 108 something. Or no, what I forget but I think I got 96. No, was it 70? Or was the total 96 and I got 72? I forget what the stats were, but it felt weird, 70, it'd be like paying $70 for Carl's Jr., but pesos aren't worth that much. So, yeah, I had a lot of pesos. And, yeah, enjoyed my lunch immensely. And then it was time to reverse the process and go back across the border. And that would be pretty uneventful, surprisingly. I was very worried about that because, again, I'm walking by myself, at least for a little while, with no inkling of Spanish. In fact, I ran into someone that could understand English a bit, but couldn't speak it very well. So I tried to hold a conversation with them because it seemed like they spoke it very well, but they told me they didn't understand it as well as they spoke it, which was interesting. So at any rate, I walked, back to the U.S. border crossing, and that actually worked out even better than I could have imagined because once I got close enough, of course, I was able to find an officer that could help me. And they actually got authorization from their superiors to allow me to go straight to the front. Not to be mean, but sometimes being blind does have its advantages. That saved me a heck of a lot of time. Not only did I get straight to the front, but I didn't even have to put my items through the security checkpoint thingy in the building like I did when I came through in April when I came back across. Basically, this time all I did was they directed me straight to the what I'll call the interrogation area, the interview area where they do the basic check. What are you doing? What were you doing in Mexico? And what are you bringing back? Are you bringing back? Actually, they asked it like this. They're like, "What are you doing in Mexico? You bringing anything back with you?" And when they asked that question, "Are you bringing anything back with me?" I thought about saying, "Oh yeah, I got some couple of cows. I got some. I think if I had brought part of my lunch with me, I thought about this actually. If I had brought part of my lunch with me, they probably wouldn't have let me enter with it. They probably would have had to confiscate it. I should try that next time just to see what happens. If like I eat something like from Mexico and I like part of a hamburger and I try to bring it across. It's like, yeah, I'm bringing back a hamburger that I bought while I was in Mexico. That's probably the one thing that would get them to look at my thing a little closer. I'd be declaring a hamburger. But nope, I just, since pesos was the only thing I was bringing back, I'm like, yep, that's it. I'm just bringing back a few pesos. And they're like, okay. And no hassle, no problem at all. Very friendly. Even friendlier than when I came through in April. Actually, when I came back across on the April border crossing, returning back to the U.S., the person that greeted us was the same person that gave us authorization to cross over in the first place. Remember when I said earlier that I got permission? That was the same, person that welcomed me back to the U.S. And they're like, "Yeah, you made it." That was cool. But yeah, going across this time, it was even more friendlier than that, and it was very, very smooth. And I got out, and then got to the trolley and made it back to Carlsbad. And then I discovered that another friend was coming by, like the visits of the client and her friends were going to be more frequent, and that I would need to find other things to do all the way up until that Saturday if I wanted to stick around. So I'm like, well, that's going to complicate things because that's like 2 days from now. So I'm like, well, I can't go to the border again. I mean, I'm sure I could only get across with no passport every so often. Because I did it in April, I did it in November. Pretty sure I wouldn't be able to get away with doing that 2 days in a row. Otherwise, I probably would have done it again because it is quite fun. So instead, I gave it some thought, and I opted to go, to head back home, and that I broke the news to Eric and told him that I will go to Palomar with him the next time I come down. Even if I just come down to visit him, I'll come down there and we'll make arrangements. So maybe I'll hang out at his place for a night or whatever. And we'll head up to Palomar. We'll make it happen. Probably wait till it stops raining so much. We've had quite the wet December, and we're going to continue to have a wet 2017. It's looking like so far. So I don't think I want to travel too much here in the winter. Once we get into spring, though, I mean, who knows what's going to happen. But yeah, that was, and then that was pretty much the end of that adventure. And then I headed back to Los Angeles, and then on up to I went to Palmdale, and I hung out there for a week, visiting my friends, my same friends that I visit. But this time I stayed, instead of staying at their place, I stayed at an area hotel that I hadn't stayed at before, called the Red Roof Inn there in Palmdale, and hung out with all my buddies there it's hard to believe I was down there for a week. I even hung out with my old buddy Michelle that I hadn't seen in a while. Got to check out her new place in Palmdale, and that's another fun phone spot for T-Mobile. In fact, that's the only way to get internet out there, which is kind of amusing. So, yeah, that was the big significant events that occurred in 2016 for me. All of them. That was quite exciting, and I hope that 2017 could potentially have some interesting adventures. I mean, you never know. One potential adventure that may happen is that the American Council of the Blind convention is going to be this summer, is going to be coming back to Reno, Nevada, and I believe it's even going to be at the same hotel that it was at in 2011 when it was last in Reno, and when I was in Reno for that. So that would be interesting to attend that and be able to compare things like internet performance and how the hotel is from 2011 compared to being there now. So that is pretty much right now the only planned item that, well, it's not really planned, but it's a goal that I have to try and go to that potentially. And another potential thing, maybe the LA County Air Show again, depending on who I can get to go with me again. Also possibly there might be a possibility I could go to the East Coast maybe this year, this summer. There's a few things I'm looking at, maybe trying to see if I can do during July or August. Meeting up with friends on the East Coast would be kind of cool. You just never know. You can't really obviously predict what the year is going to be like. But one of the main goals I do have for this year, and this may actually and likely will involve a trip to Oregon, so that I can work with my buddy Robert to help me get my passport. I want to get that done. I want to get my passport so I can legally travel internationally. I might just get the passport card because for the foreseeable future, I don't see myself going anywhere other than U.S. and Canada. I'm not going to, there's no way I could out and plan a trip to Australia right out of the gate. I don't have that kind of money, not yet anyway. If I could work for Facebook or something, that would potentially change that over time, but, well, not yet. So any international travels that I do would be U.S., from Mexico to or Canada, into Mexico, from the U.S. to Mexico or Canada. So that, my friend Pam told me about that passport card, so I got to look into that, and got to go up to, probably got to go up to Oregon to do that, which I need to go up there anyway. I haven't been up there in a while. And so I will, that is one main goal. The two main things I hope to do this year that I have my sights set on is get my passport and hopefully go to the ACB convention at the end of June. And anything else that happens, well, we'll just have to wait and see. So if you want to know what happens in 2017, stay tuned. Or if you want to get a complete recap of what happened in 2017, stay tuned until this time next year, and I'll tell you what happened in 2017. Take care. Catch you all on my next great adventure, whatever that may be, whenever that may be.